Hi, I'm Nathan from Serious Geeks, and this is going to be a tactical video on the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer for Codex Necrons. This tactical I feel is quite an important one because I think the Necron army has a big problem when it comes to anti-tank weaponry. They can't really rely on just warriors to try and attrition a vehicle to death, especially if there are multiple vehicles and some of them are toughness 8. You're just not going to get the results you need. So the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer acts as a critical linchpin for competitive Necron lists. First port of call, let's check out the stat line. Units can be in 1 to 3, they have a movement of 8, which is very effective, it's very fast, very good for a unit that is going to be a firepower based unit to be able to hug terrain and leap out and shoot things. They have the standard 3+ weapon skill and ballistic skill. Again, quite effective, quite consistent, that's a good stat line to start with, Space Marines use it all the time. Strength 4, which is fairly standard, it's what you kind of expect for a Necron unit anyway. It's not brilliant, but it's okay. Toughness 5, which is kind of what we expect from a destroyer unit in the Necron army. It's quite effective. Toughness 5 means that Strength 8, Strength 9, which are the anti-tank weapons of choice in most armies, particularly all that melter that's going around, are only going to wound one of these models on a 3+, which is actually fairly good. Combine that with a wounds value of 4 and the fact that you should be operating from slightly further away ranges, preferably with obscuring terrain protecting you from a lot of firepower, means that anti-tank weapons are not going to be able to one-shot kill many units of heavy destroyers. In fact, they'll be lucky if one weapon kills one model. It's a very effective survivability and resilience factor for this unit. Lastly, I've already spoke about the wounds. With the toughness, we've got attacks. 2 attacks, which is okay. It means that in a pinch you can kill some gaunt that might have charged you if need be. To be honest, you're probably going to want to just book out of there, get out of the way, get out of dodge, and just sacrifice the shooting. But you never know, it could come in handy. And then we have Leadership 10, which is standard for Necrons, can factor in with some weapons that might affect leadership, particularly in new Codex books, but at the moment doesn't do too much, especially as the unit is only going to be small, so you're not going to lose any models anyway from attrition tests that have failed. And it has a 3+ armor save, which again is standard for a heavy destroyer or a destroyer in general. Skipping the weapons quickly, we're going to go to the abilities because they're relevant to the weapons. As always, we have the living metal reanimation protocols and command protocols rules that most Necron units have. We have repulsor platform, which means heavy weapons in this unit do not suffer to hit roll penalties for firing heavy weapons in the same turn that they have moved. That is very effective. It means that the unit can stay consistent when it's moving, it can stay consistent with its shooting, it's always going to hit on a 3+ unless there's other factors in play, and that means that you can rely on them a little bit more. And lastly, special rules, being a destroyer, they are hardwired for destruction. They re-roll hit rolls of a 1, which is pretty good. I mean, okay, they only hit on a 3+, but that's still pretty good. It means that 50% of all of your misses will get a re-roll. Keywords, as you could probably expect, they are infantry, destroyer cult, Lokhust Heavy Destroyers, Necrons and Dynasty, but also, crucially, they have fly, which means with their movement of 8, they have a slightly better chance of drawing a bead on their targets, hiding behind obscuring terrain, jumping out, destroying something. I suppose the clue was in the name, Destroyers. So you can see the baseline for this unit is it's a firepower based unit. They're very small, they can be taken in units of 1 to 3, which means they are definitely a support element, they're not going to be a frontline target. You don't want them taking all the firepower and all the attention, which is where your other units come in, like your Scorpec Destroyers. Your Scorpec Destroyers should be rushing forward, taking all the hits and taking all the attention, using their own stratagems to keep them alive with a -1 to wound. Your Heavy Destroyers, they're in support. The Lokhust Heavy Destroyer, they're jumping around, targeting units that have to be eliminated, that are large targets. To do that, they have 2 weapon choices. The first of these is the Enmitic Exterminator. It's got a decent range 36. It has heavy 3d3 shots, which is quite a lot of shots. It's going to get an average of 6 per model. Strength 7, -1 AP, damage 1, and blast. This weapon is a very good weapon against most armies in the game, except for the most commonly played army that everyone loves, Space Marines, which is a bit of a problem, a bit of a concern. Obviously it won't do very good against Custodes either. And it'll probably just tickle knights. But in general, most armies in the game have infantry that this unit can absolutely obliterate if it has this weapon. The big problem is, why would you take this weapon system on a unit of Lokhust Heavy Destroyers? Your army is replete with anti-infantry weapons. You're going to take a load of warriors, you're going to have Scorpic Destroyers that are good at culling infantry. You just don't need it. You're not hurting for the ability to kill hordes. Of course, in the future that could change with certain codex books, that you may need a large extension to your anti-infantry firepower, but then there are things like Annihilation Barges, which come in at 120 points and have a quite critical platform that's quite tough. So, why would you do that? No, this weapon system, although it's a blast, which doesn't particularly help with units of 6 to 10, you already get a minimum of 3 shots. It does help a little bit with units of 11 plus, over 10. You have a minimum of 6 shots, and it will be between 6 and 9 shots, which isn't too bad. However, you're not taking Lokhust Heavy Destroyers to wipe out enemy infantry. You might put one with an Mythic Exterminator inside a Lokhust Destroyer unit to try and beef up their ability to hurt hordes, which I think is quite a valid tactic, but you don't want a dedicated bunch of units on the table leaping out and trying to wipe out hordes, because you just don't need to. So logically this moves us on to the Gauss Destructor. This weapon system has a range of 36 inches. It only fires 1 shot a piece, but it's strength 10 with a -4 AP, and crucially it does 3d3 damage, which means it's going to do a minimum of 3 damage on a target and a maximum of 9 with an average of 6. So if you hear me say it's done 6 damage, that's because I'm talking averages. It's a very effective weapon system, particularly when you reroll ones to hit, and I'll talk later some other little benefits that you can do with this unit. What does this weapon system provide that other units don't get? The ability to hurt monsters and to hurt tanks. What you can do is you can hurt that big target that is coming for you. If Mortarion is rushing towards you, have you seen his new stat line? You're not going to want to just tickle him with Gauss Flares. You're going to want to hurt him. You're going to want to put a lot of wounds on him in one go. The only way to do that is with a few units that have some multi-damage weapons, and one of which is the Lokhust Heavy Destroyer. So for me, the Gauss Destructor is the pick of the bunch. It is a brilliant weapon system, and you can either take it on one Lokhust Heavy Destroyer that you have points for that hides at the back just to put an extra anti-tank shot on the table. You can have units of 2 to 3, which means that you actually have a hunting destroying unit that can leap out and target something. I mean, if you've got 3 hits at strength 10 and 3 wounds, -4 AP means most vehicles won't get safe, you're going to be doing a lot of damage. I mean, of course, invulnerable saves factor in here, and that is a bit frustrating that there are some targets that have these things. But, most invulnerable saves on vehicles are not going to be better than the 5+ anyway, depending on the vehicle. And if they're really heavy vehicles, they pay a lot of points for it. So it all evens out. Also, one Lokhust Heavy Destroyer in an ordinary Lokhust Destroyer unit that has one of these can split fire. It can fire at a large target while the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers are annihilating heavy infantry, or it adds a bit extra punch to whatever target you're firing at. Now, if we look at support for this unit, I'm going to absolutely rule out the Canoptech Plasma Sight. It just doesn't do anything for this unit. It helps you in close combat, melee. It's just going to hurt this unit to get into close combat. Even Lokhust Destroyers that might have more models, therefore more attacks, they're not going to benefit from a Canoptech Plasma Sight, really, and it's a waste of points and the potential to lose a model. It's not worth doing. When we look at the Cryptex, the Chronomancer can protect a unit of Heavy Destroyers or Lokhust Destroyers, but again, that 5+ invulnerable save, which is very good. Do you want it with them, or do you want to give that benefit to the Scorpic Destroyers? It depends on your list build, it depends on your circumstances. Chronomancers are not bad, but most of the time that 5+ will be on something else, not a small unit of Lokhust Heavy Destroyers that probably should be used in obscuring terrain for the most part anyway, and target saturation. On that note, before I move on to the Destroyer-specific characters, another support element that is really critical for Lokhust Heavy Destroyers and Lokhust Destroyers in general is target saturation, and that comes from things like Scorpic Destroyers. Scorpec Destroyers are an aggressive killing unit. They fight in melee. They need to be up the board quickly. They're a pressure unit. The opponent needs to deal with them. They're going to be taking their objectives. They're going to be killing their objective holding troops. They're going to cause damage to the opponent. They need to be eliminated. Use this to take focus and attention away from your Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. It's a mantra you'll often hear me repeat: target saturation. It keeps things alive. It keeps things that would otherwise be very soft and easy to eliminate from being targeted and taken out very quickly, and as a matter of just clicking your fingers. Moving on, we have the last characters that really affect things like Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. You can't have the Catacomb Command Barge or an Overlord helping because they don't have the core keyword. The Royal Warden is not going to do much either because, again, no core keyword. Lords, they do the same, no core keyword, but you do have Lokhust Lords and Scorpec Lords. Now, Scorpec Lords don't really seem like they're going to do much to assist in Lokhust Heavy Destroyers because the two are going to be in opposite ends of the battlefield. Scorpec Lords are going to be rushing forward, making best use of their weapons and their stat line to get into assault. They're going to be in melee. They're going to be supporting your Scorpec Destroyers and giving them buffs, so there's no real point considering a Scorpec Lord giving its benefits to things like Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. However, a Lokhust Lord, which comes in slightly cheaper depending on what you give him, I mean obviously he can have a Resurrection Orb and that would bump up his points to similar to the Scorpec Lord. However, as he's got a Resurrection Orb, he can support that Warrior Squad, which very well might operate quite closely to the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. So at this point, that the Lokhust Lord can actually support not only the Warriors in being a close combat ability troop that can leap out and attack things that come too close to it, but also stick with the Lokhust Destroyers and the Lokhust Heavy Destroyers to give them the benefit of United in Destruction aura, which means that they can re-roll wound rolls of a 1. Since Lokhust Heavy Destroyers are strength 10, this means you're able to wound vehicles on a 3+, re-roll in 1s, which means 50% of all failed wounds you get a re-roll on. This, combined with their Hardwired for Destruction ability, makes them very effective at targeting units and getting enough damage and wounds on them to actually be effective in points value. Critically though, you don't have to have a Lokhust Lord supporting your Lokhust Heavy Destroyers. If you've got 3 in the unit, you can utilise extermination protocols, which means you can fully re-roll the wound rolls. That means you're re-rolling a 1 or a 2, makes them very dangerous, and it means you don't have to pay points to have a Lokhust Heavy Destroyer supported by a Lokhust Lord. A trio of Lokhust Heavy Destroyers that pops extermination protocols will re-roll hit rolls of 1, so you can safely say that you're going to get 2 most times, maybe 3 hits, and then you're likely to get your wounds through as well. This means that you're likely to do a lot of damage, and it means that whatever vehicle that you're targeting is going to suffer an average of 18 damage, because all 3 are going to be wounding most turns. Actually, I think the average might be a little bit less than that if you use pure Math Hammer, but if you use game experience, you can expect to do a lot of damage to any one vehicle each turn by popping extermination protocols. Now, extermination protocols may have some utility on the Enmitic exterminator weapon. You can reroll the wounds, means you can get a lot of damage through. However, like I said, you're not really taking the unit for that. But if you do have it, at least you know that you can completely eliminate infantry squads with this ability. You're not going to do much to Space Marines. They have 2 wounds. They're going to be wounding on a 3+ and then getting a 4+ save due to the -1 save from throws and the AP, but you're still going to have a bit of utility against infantry. I'm going to move on to the summary now, because let's be honest, there's not much else that will benefit this unit. Okay, you got Talent for Annihilation from Mefrit, but again, you're firing 1 shot each. The odds you getting mortal wounds on a target is quite low. Of course, it might actually increase if you use the Amnitic Exterminator weapon system, but again, you're not taking the unit for that, and why would you pop that on this unit when you could pop it on another unit that gets equal amount of shots, such as a Warrior Squad, and you can buff them up with other stratagem support as well. Apart from that, there's not much else. So summary-wise, let's look at the stat line. I think it's quite a good stat line. I think it's quite survivable. They're quite swift. They're able to get to their targets thanks to obscuring terrain and the ability to move fairly fast. I think the weapon system is the Gauss Destructor to go to. I think it's very effective again. I think it's good at taking out targets that Necrons otherwise might struggle against. It fills up a niche in the army that is not touched on much. I mean, the amount of anti-tank weapons you can get in the Space Marine army through things like Melter, etc., means that a weapon system like this on a fast-moving, resilient platform is very effective and worth its points. 70 points a model isn't too bad. I highly recommend this unit if you have other destroyer units in the army. They're going to be targeted as a priority most of the time, so again, target saturation is there to keep them alive. Character support, not really needed. You have the access to stratagem support in the extermination protocols, but a Lokhust Lord is the standout choice there because he can support another unit with his resurrection orb while supporting these destroyers. So that's my summary, that's my thoughts. Highly recommend the unit for Necrons. I think it's a very effective choice that covers a niche that isn't filled in other aspects of the Necron army, particularly if you go with a lot of warriors. So highly recommended unit. I think it's very underserved when people criticise them. I think they're a lot tougher than people let on. Don't rely on reanimation protocols for them, by the way. It's not going to happen. I just had to get that in here. And that's about all I can say about them. Let me know what you think about this unit at home. Please comment below. Please like and subscribe. Try and promote the channel. And I thank you all for your time. Catch you all soon. Peace out.